And according to that, I am live. Boom. Very good to see you all. My name is Hiko Simon. This is Tokyo Tonight. It's 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time, just the same as it is every week. I am not doing audio offset tricks this week. I think it was actually working best if I wasn't playing with it. Hopefully, that's how it'll be fairly in sync. I was spending a couple of minutes just playing with that, and I realized how terrible it was last week. So I'm just sticking with the default, where I think it was a little bit off, but tolerable. Great to see everybody in the comments. In fact, already there we've got Ben Duncan, 1 minute to boom. In fact, I'm actually realizing now as well that the chat is a little bit offset at the moment, probably because I'm using a bigger screen. Well, anyway, 1 minute to boom from Ben Duncan, Sergeant Bilko. Juan Johnson, good to see you. We've got Mr. Cordy Chep, DJ Sunnyside Up, great to see you. We've got Quint Ranked. Are we having technical difficulties? No, they're technical features, and I have them every week. Very good also to see that we have Andrew. Good to see Andrew. A Devoid, good morning. Black Tingu, g'day mate, right back at you. G'day everybody. Do remember, as always, to say hello if you're in the comments there. Would like to welcome the 6 audio podcast listeners. Aaron, great to see Aaron, as always, a moderator. Thank you for being in here. Interesting experiment just for those of you who are interested. Again, it turns out that this video, the file from this stream actually gets saved on my local PC at the same time as I stream, which means I can actually just upload it immediately up to a podcast after this. So I will basically make this an audio podcast available after the live stream every week. Truth is, I prefer to see people in the chat here and to come and join me. But of course, if you don't have the chance to watch this live and you do want to catch up, just listening to it on a run or in your car or something like that, yeah, I'll play the radio DJ. So you can get the audio version of this. Of course, you can get it from YouTube if you're clever. Not even that clever, but you can get it from Anchor FM /Hiko Simon. 6 people listened to it last week. That's cool. I'm actually curious how that was for people, and I will keep putting that out after the show. It's pretty easy to do, and it's free. The things that I was looking for, so I will continue with all of that good stuff. Nice to see people continuing to roll into the chat at the moment. So yes, from that perspective, I guess I have to make sure I keep making this relatively audio edit friendly, just so I can cut it off into sections. This is, of course, the friendly welcome section. Hope everybody's good where they are. I don't know how it is in all your various parts of the world, although it is funny how the shortest day of the year is in December, but yet it continues to get colder, like well into January, and it is still, while Tokyo definitely has probably the least bad winter in any of the main islands of Japan, it still is cold. That is a thing, but yeah, it's pretty good. Sunny weather. I shouldn't really complain. I've been trying to get back into running and so on, and trying to get rid. It's hard to be active and lose weight, when it's cold, but that's what I've been doing. A couple of things this week as well. I am enjoying watching the Book of Boba Fett. I don't know if anyone else is watching that. The last episode, probably I won't spoil. But it was good. I'm really, really enjoying it. I also saw one of the series I was really looking forward to coming back on Netflix. I haven't found very much on Netflix that I like. In fact, if people have recommendations for Netflix, definitely drop them in the chat. I was really looking forward to Ozark. I enjoyed the first few seasons of that. And yeah, the two things I realized from the latest season of Ozark. Number one, it's... one thing I am actually finding I am enjoying lately is I think I enjoy more series like The Expanse and Better Call Saul and these series where they drop an episode every week. I look forward to watching that episode each week, whereas when they drop a whole season, especially if it's something that's compelling and that I want to watch, I just get exhausted. And I did that. I binge watched Ozark in 2 days. And it was good, but I just sort of hated myself afterwards. So, I kind of think that model of dropping a whole series at once, I don't really like it. The other thing about Ozark is while it continues to be good, and I do continue to enjoy it, and I'm glad it's the final season, and there is a little bit of shark jumping going on, I think. It's just they're trying to outdo each other and build up the plot and the stakes all the time, and it's just getting a little bit silly. I thought House of Cards did that as well, by the way. It just gets a little bit like, it's getting, some of the situations are getting to be a little bit ridiculous. So from that perspective, that said, I love the characters. I do love how it's made. I love, I still love the show. So I was glad to watch that. But, I watched it in 2 days and I've got nothing else to watch. So again, recommendations welcome. I'm curious what you've all been enjoying lately and what you're looking forward to. I am most looking forward to Better Call Saul when that comes back. To me, that's just like one of the best things I've ever seen on TV. And actually thinking about what I just said with Ozark as well. Breaking Bad, I love Breaking Bad, and so many series. Breaking Bad did this a little bit as well, where they'll have one or two great seasons, and then you can sort of get that sense in the third and fourth season when they're trying to like stretch it out, or they change the writers or something like that, or they feel like they have to escalate it. And I must admit, I found with Breaking Bad, I got really exhausted, and I kind of started to really not like it by about the fourth and the fifth seasons, although I loved the first and second. Then you got the Battlestar Galactica thing where the writing gets kind of really bad after 3 seasons when it was really really great in the first 2 seasons. The Expanse has been really good at being consistent, but Better Call Saul, I think what makes it great and what makes it avoid what's happening with Ozark is that it's it's hitting towards a known point in time, and everyone who's seen Breaking Bad knows where it's going, and they know it's a tragedy. So there's no avoiding that, and I like that. It forces them, it constrains what they can do, and the result is they go deep into all the characters and their backstories, and it's really, really great. So to me, I'm looking forward to that. And there's actually not much else I like to watch at the moment. That's just me. But anyway, curious what you're all watching. Freezing there where Erin is. I'm sorry to hear that. Sleeping in your van, surf trip, DJ Sunnyside Up, living the dream. I must admit, and you're further south, that's right. So, you get the warmer currents as well. The Kuroshio, the warm currents, they go about to halfway up Chiba. And I used to surf in the bottom half of Chiba in winter, and you can totally do that. Like, northern half of Chiba in Ibaraki is just ridiculously cold, especially in winter. So, man, I'm jealous. I'd love to do that. That is good stuff, DJ Sunnyside Up. Believe in yourself. Good to see you. Greetings to all indeed. Any more people rocking? We've got Andrea Moboy, good to see you. But men's final, of course, the tennis going great, and it's late in Melbourne, but always glad that you made it. So good to see you there, Andrea Moboy, and everybody else. Quinn Rankin watching old movies. I rewatched The Big Short the other day, and I must admit, it's such a great movie. I've watched it for like 4 times now, and the first half of the movie, it's brilliant and funny, and I was like laughing my head off. And I actually was like, I was remembering, like, this movie is so great. I tweeted, this movie is hilarious. But then it gets really dark after that, and I'd forgotten that I tweeted this is hilarious, and then all of a sudden I felt really self-conscious. But yeah, anyway, so not a lot going on. Of course, the COVID situation is terrible. I'll talk about that a little bit, but we are definitely heading into another state of emergency in Tokyo, which again, we don't do the full lockdowns like in other countries, but it does mean a lot less fun happening. So, I guess that's why we should be looking out for things on Netflix. Dan H., what's the fallout with SoftBank and ARM sale failing? Oh, it failed? Are you talking? In fact, wait a minute. Oh, you mean the sale to NVIDIA? Did that get blocked? I read all my feeds this morning. I didn't see anything on that. I know that there are investigations into the this is the ARM chip sale to NVIDIA, right? That is a big deal, and I know that there are a lot of objections and antitrust investigations into it in a lot of countries, I believe, including here, but also US and Europe. I hadn't heard that there was a conclusion or that it had been blocked anywhere. I will go and look up the details of it, but I haven't seen any fallout because I haven't. But that is fascinating. Well, yeah, that's those ARM processors at the moment, their architecture is so in demand, and there is a concern about giving it, letting someone like NVIDIA have full control over all of it. But I haven't seen any fallout from that. You're right, big deal, of course, for SoftBank. So yeah, fascinating. Dan H., I didn't know. Wow, I'm gonna be looking that up right after the show. By the way, also thank you, Dan H., for the recommendation of Asianometry. If you ever have other YouTube channel recommendations, please, I'll take them. I watch I'm a faithful, loyal subscriber of Asianometry. I love that channel now, so thank you for that recommendation before, and I recommend everybody here as well if you're interested. Shubhas, great that you can make it. Our representative from Panama. Buenos dias, good to have you with us. I hope you're having a nice coffee and enjoying the show. Tokyo 503, Aussie Open updates from Melbourne. Thank you for those. Indeed, that does sound like an epic fight. I can't believe that Nadal is in the final as well. I mean, that is pretty awesome. I'm not a big tennis fan, but I can appreciate that. Yeah, Odie Jr., boom. Late boomer, we all are. Welcome in here. Also, great to see Giancarlo Lanoy. Where you saying hello from there, Giancarlo? Great to have you in here, and thank you for saying hello. And everyone else. Oh, the other thing, of course, which I've been following, which isn't really a topic for the show, but the Ukraine-Russia situation thing. To me, that is one of many things in the world I just find completely unfathomably crazy. That, if that situation is how it appears, that Russia could really be looking like they're going to fully invade Ukraine. It's like a country of 60 million people, I think. It's more people than Poland. In fact, 60 million sounds like too much the moment I say it out loud, but it's a huge country in the middle of Europe. Yeah, to me, I really hope nothing happens there. I've never been to Ukraine, but I've been across the river from it. I've driven from Galatz to Tulcea in Romania along the Danube, basically across the river from Ukraine. And it occurred to me, it was always fascinating being from island countries, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand. I've never been to a place which has land borders before. So I found the whole way along the drive, it was just fascinating to be able to look and see villages over there, a dozen meters away that were in a different country. And I was tempted to go across, but I couldn't do it. But anyway, I hope that situation works out. 5 hours, wow. Anyway, let's get into the topics. So great to see you all. PB, great to see you, by the way. Thank you for saying hello. Thank you, everybody. As Aaron says, Dan H. always has solid recommendations, and I do appreciate them. From Philippines, John Carlo Lanoy. Well, great to have you from the Philippines. I think you guys are 1 hour behind Japan, right? It's 9:30 for you? Or is it the other way around? Are you ahead? But anyway, great to have someone from the Philippines in the chat. And yeah. Well, yes. Like I said, I just hope nothing happens in the Ukraine thing. But it's interesting to watch. The other thing I also do not have in the topics for tonight, but is of course the ICBM and the missile test that North Korea is doing. And on the one hand, it's almost so, I know this is part of what they're going for. It's kind of so routine now. It's almost boring that they're launching missiles every day. Today was a particularly interesting one, however, that it had a vertical 2,000 kilometer trajectory. Now, remember, Earth orbit is space is 100 kilometers, and the ISS orbits are 300 kilometers, and they fired this directly up 2,000 kilometers, and that apparently can translate into a horizontal distance of around 5,000 kilometers if they want to do that. I.e., they're not showing, I believe they're still talking about a range of Alaska, Hawaii. They're not talking about being able to hit anywhere in the US yet, but clearly North Korea is building up its capacity to be able to hit anywhere in North America, and that is kind of interesting, at least that they're enhancing that capability, at least as a deterrent from anything from the US. So anyway, that was an interesting thing today. I will jump into the topics. So in terms of what's going on this week, first of all, these are taken from the start of the week. It's the foreigner situation, the immigration situation. It has been interesting how throughout the week there have been more and more business groups, and even Kono Taro is saying, the LDP press secretary and prime ministerial candidate is saying that the immigration ban does not make any sense anymore. Business groups saying that it's hurting businesses, the student groups pointing out it's hurting Japan's international reputation. Apparently yesterday there were global simultaneous protests by exchange students shut out of Japan. And these are people for whom, who are not working yet they're adults and their lives have been put on hold for 2 years. And the criteria, and you might say, I'm kind of on the fence, at least to the extent that, sure, there's a pandemic. Of course, there are immigration restrictions, although Japan has far stronger restrictions on immigration than most other countries in the circumstances. But sure, there would be some. But what's frustrating is that the government's not being clear about its criteria for how, they're not showing their thinking, or whether they even have any thinking on how and when they will reopen the borders, which makes it look like it's more based on politics and image rather than policy. And that part of it is disturbing. I mean, set a criteria for what is the number of cases, what is the number of, either set a hard date or set a fair criteria, basically, to allow people to come in with quarantine or whatever, or do whatever, but they're not communicating anything, and that's causing a lot of harm. And yet, at the same time as we're talking about the extreme harm that the 2.5-year now isolation of Japan from international visitors has caused the Japanese economy and so on, we still have like NHK the other day doing a story, doing a feature about how Japan is competing for international jobs. I talked about this last week, I think. In fact, I didn't see it on my topics for tonight, so I think this is from last week. But NHK this morning did a 20-minute feature on how, IT workers there. Japan is having trouble competing for attracting IT workers because overseas now IT workers get better wages than in Japan, so they're having trouble attracting talent. They didn't mention two things. They didn't mention that the underlying thing is that in Japan itself, wages have not gone up for nearly 30 years. So the first problem is that Japanese IT engineers, the whole industry, is underpaid in Japan. But the second issue is, surely how can they be competing for IT jobs when no new foreign IT immigrant labor has been allowed into the country for 2.5 years? They talked about it for 20 minutes and they didn't discuss that. Here is the governor of Tokyo talking about making Tokyo an international financial green hub. Everyone talking about how all the financial services companies are fleeing from Hong Kong, and how Tokyo should be competing to attract all of that foreign investment talent that's leaving Hong Kong. Yet the border's been closed for 2.5 years. There are 370,000 people waiting to come in. And there's no clear plan for how they are going to resume opening immigration and how long it will take to how is Japan supposed to compete for international talent or become an international financial hub when they are just, when they don't even have any plan for making the country open to immigration and jobs again? So yeah, there's all of that. So something's kind of missing from these conversations, and the fact that like people in Japan discussing this are so completely tone deaf, and it's like, I guess that maybe it just doesn't register with them that the borders are closed. People talk about this like, yeah, we need more foreigners. Let's talk about what we can do to get more foreigners. And yet they'll cover on the same news thing that, yes, the 370,000 people are waiting to come into Japan. So that is a frustrating situation. And from my perspective, even if the policy makes sense, which I suppose it kind of could, even though it's kind of extreme and it's not really consistent with what any other country in the OECD is doing. Japan has, for a country that has no lockdown and has had a pretty liberal approach to the whole pandemic, they have the most extreme travel and immigration approach of the whole OECD on this. And there's no expressed rational basis for it or criteria for when it will change. And, at some point, of course, Kishida is better at speaking and more charismatic than Suga. That was something that damaged Suga, was just that even when he had good ideas, he just didn't like talking to the press and he didn't like explaining himself. And Kishida, like spontaneously does 2-hour-long press conferences and so on. But, sooner or later, just being good at talking is not going to save you from having to explain this stuff. So I do hope that happens soon. And yeah, just clarity would be, I think, the thing everyone needs. Great to see Iraq299 there in the chat. Great to have you in here. John Carlo Lanoy, hope I have a latest news for Tom Brady. If Tom Brady is watching, I have news for him. But yes, if he's interested in retiring in Tokyo, I have some. That'll be one of the later topics in the show. I'm not, other than he's very good at football and everyone is a bit surprised that he was retiring. I don't know much else about what to say about the Tom Brady situation. I hope he has a pleasant retirement with semi-inflated footballs. Yes, in here, who else have we got? Magic Strawmaker, good to see you. Any news on allowing time with student visa into Japan anytime soon? So Magic Strawmaker, as I just was saying, very frustrating that there is nothing to report in terms of news or plans. There's been no express criteria for when they will reopen, and the frustration around that is building. So the hope is that all of these protests now happening not just from outside, not just foreigners criticizing Japan, but actually within the government itself, itself now, and really impactful business groups now lobbying around this. The pressure is there. It's a hot news topic. So hopefully the government's going to feel some pressure to make a decision soon. But nothing more than that I can say right now, unfortunately. But good to see you there in the chat. By the way, everybody, I say just a reminder to everybody: if you want to get my attention with a comment, because I obviously can't read every single comment. Do what Andrew Mobwe did. Say my name, Hiko Simon. If you spell it correctly, it will flash orange, and I will definitely respond to your comment, or I will almost never miss it. Russian chatbot. Thank you for deleting Russian chatbot by Erin. Appreciate that. And keeping going through. Ebon Legend. Hi, good to have you here in the chat. Ebon Legend, good to have you in here. BTC Chiba, also good to have you. Wingstar, hey now, good to see you, Wingstar. Awesome to see everyone in here. We've got Dan H has a comment. It hasn't officially failed yet, but right-hand man Marcelo Claure wants a 1 billion, and there's a huge dispute falling out, and the stock price is now 4,000 yen. I was not aware of all of that. I'm aware of the competition investigations threatening to torpedo the deal. I didn't know that the deal itself was going to go through. So, yeah, that's all. I mean, I guess pretty tough for SoftBank. I mean, SoftBank's got deep pockets, obviously. And, in a way, I mean, it's almost like why I don't understand fully why they want to sell ARM. I understand that NVIDIA wants to buy them and that that'd be a great acquisition for whoever wants them. But, at the same time, there isn't a lot of diversity right now in chip makers. So the hope is if they sell it, they might sell it to somebody who will build it up rather than absorb it and reduce the numbers, but we'll see. Harold Prim, Mikitani, CEO of Rakuten, is very vocal about opening borders. Yeah, a lot of people. I mean, when Taro Kono is very vocal as well, and he's like the press secretary for the LDP. It looks like everybody who has two brain cells to rub together, even inside the government, is saying this is stupid now. So I do hope that will lead to some pressure and maybe some updates next week. We'll see. Theodore Sharp, excellent to see you, Theodore Sharp. Thanks for saying hello. Next topic that we've got, in fact, actually, this is just what I was talking about. It's the same topic, actually. Japan's biggest business lobby, the Keidanren, is saying, hey, enough with the waiting for the letting our foreigners in already. And basically what I was just saying, made sense in the beginning to keep Omicron out, but now it's here. So what are we doing? Why are we here? Also, why is the quarantine period for returning Japanese people at the moment 10 days? The government has announced that they will reduce isolation from 10 to 7 days. Even the Keidanren is saying that the government's really damaging the country, and they don't seem to have an idea why at the moment. So, good to see the pressure, and again, pressure not just from outsiders, but from, real insiders. So that's a thing. For those lucky people who have gotten into Japan to work, pretty awful. I have talked somewhat glibly about the problems with the foreign trainee intern program that the Japanese government sponsors, mainly to allow people from lower income countries, particularly Vietnam, China, Indonesia, Philippines. A lot of people from those countries have been encouraged to come to Japan to work as, for example, nurses or on farms. The concept of the scheme is good. It's this idea that they sell it, that it's an idea, come to Japan, work as an intern, learn Japanese technology, that you can improve your skills and earn some money to send home. And maybe you'll get a job offer to stay on in Japan, or maybe you'll get to take this technology back to your home country. And it's a very successful program. It's attracted a lot of workers. The problem is that the reality of this program is, in many cases, particularly the farm jobs, that it simply is being used as cheap and, frankly, something very close to indentured labor. Problems on both ends of the program, of course. There are people, it sounds like there are people making money from this, and again, getting people trapped in debts and so on that they have to work off under this, from the basically kind of quasi-human trafficking from the overseas side. But here in Japan as well, so many cases of abuse coming up, or cases of employers not paying their employees at all, withholding their passports, practically imprisoning them. There was a worker from Vietnam who worked at a farm, I believe, or a small factory for 2 years, at a construction company, for 2 years. and had video of him being beaten by his boss and his co-workers, like with sticks, and being basically laughed at and bullied and abused physically for years. And he was afraid, while he was too afraid to report about it while he was an employee. But when it finished and he left the country, he showed the video and said, this shouldn't be allowed to happen. And for all of this, I mean, these are videos of this person being assaulted, physically beaten up by his boss. And just for an idea of how uninterested the Japanese government is in ensuring that people who employ people under this program follow the law and observe basic human rights. They have I can't see in this article or from any of the stuff from this that there is any plan to actually have a police investigation against the people in the video who are relentlessly beating and bullying and humiliating this person. The ministry did take the unusual step of sending a letter warning the employer about treating their employees better, but this is like assault. This is, and that if it was a Vietnamese worker with a stick beating up their Japanese boss, that they would be arrested and deported. And of course the deportation risk is a risk that only the foreigners face. But how is it that the boss is not being investigated for this? And again, it continues to create the impression that this program is really, in truth, a indentured working program. That kind of is basically abusive of human rights. The people who are in Japan, and a lot of the people lobbying to let foreigners in, want to let more people like this in, because they're losing money, because they need people that they can underpay and abuse. But again, the Japanese government seems to be, not interested in making sure, again, protecting the country's reputation from this. So, this is the thing as well. Be careful how you come into the country. Again, I think the Japanese government has to see the big picture on this. If they don't treat these people right, they're gonna end up with this is damaging Japan's international image, that these cases are coming up so often, and that the Japanese government is being seen to not be doing anything about it. Another problem, unfortunately. Going back to quickly look at the comments, I see Sergeant Bilko thought it was about licensing. Oh, was this for the chips thing? I'm not sure. Maybe, sorry, that comment's probably from a few minutes ago, so I probably missed that one. But Dan H, a new fitness and smart tech for fitness channel that I would recommend is Mark Lewis. Okay. By the way, I have Lewis. Lewis is one of my 4 into the ancestry thing. Lewis is one of the family names that I have. So I mean, it's like the second most common name in Wales, I think. So it's not a rare name. But okay, Mark Lewis, good name. I will check out a fitness and smart tech for fitness. Not so much into fitness channels. I mean, I'm into fitness, but I don't like to watch YouTube channels of people doing press-ups and making me feel like crap. But I am into smart tech for fitness. So yeah, I'm all about that. Thank you for the recommendation. And yes, indeed, rub those brain cells together. I try to do it at least once every 3 days. I try to use my brain. Theodore Sharp would have gotten deported if it was me. Well, believe me, I think a lot of people would have probably ended up getting deported. I mean, yeah, basically, a foreigner beating up your Japanese boss is just not a good situation. How many people as well, where foreigners are bystanders end up getting arrested as well. So indeed. Also, Dan H saying there, Norma is launching a fund designed to find young executives into Japanese companies whose old owners don't have a successor. Okay, it's like an OMI system for adopting successors. That's kind of they're formalizing in something that's existed informally for a long time. More than a third of Japanese SME are run by over 60-year-olds. I'm surprised that it's a third. I would have thought the number would be higher. I would have thought actually the small medium enterprises. But you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if it starts to look like farming, where it's like over 80 years old soon. Wingstar, thank you always for keeping us informed. You want to visit in-laws in Japan, but waiting for things to open up. I hope that you make it, and I really hope it will happen soon. Ended up upgrading a keyboard because of you. I'm curious, what'd you get? I mean, I love my keyboard. I made this myself. Well, I didn't. I had it made, but it was custom designed. I love Wingstar. Put in what keyboard you got. I love keyboards. I spent way too much time going down that rabbit hole. But yes, keyboards are important. So and you don't tell me that you record your writing sessions because of me either. That I'd feel self-conscious. But yes, that is also very, very cool. Anyway, back into the topics. Some better news, less dark stuff. Hopefully there'll be better news on the immigration stuff soon, but there is not right now. So of course I'll keep you posted on that. The first after all these medical universities in Japan getting caught rigging the the exam results to keep women out. And when they get caught and they finally start allowing exam entrance based on actual academic merit, what do you know? Women beat men for the first time for getting accepted into medical schools in Japan. The oyajis, the old people running the country, they're going to have to. It looks like men are going to have to figure out how to keep women out again, even with their puny brains. The fact that they were forcing women to score, that they were rigging the exam scores, that they could only get in if they scored like 10 to 15 points higher sometimes than men, sometimes even more than that in certain cases. In a way, I suppose that they were forcing the women to become smarter. The excuses that they were the justifications for restricting entrance into medical school. And these are people who could have been medical researchers. With a medical degree, there's all sorts of careers that you can go into. But the justification was that, they might end up, getting pregnant one day and taking maternity leave and, being unreliable for their careers and their availability, or marrying someone and quitting. So, they're less reliable even if they're good doctors, so we don't want to, have them. Japan at the moment knows all about having a shortage of medical workers, and yet the medical institution was committed to keeping women out. Basically for biological reasons, and of all the places to use those kind of justifications for medical institutions, and to have less competent and less intelligent doctors qualifying as a result. Nice of Japan to crawl into the late 19th century with meritocracy and universal gender-based entrance into university. And look at what happens. And, and hopefully this will finally force people to realize that rather than men, defending stupid guys coming in and blackballing women from being in the club or whatever, they'll actually start getting better doctors, and they'll figure out that it's better to have more doctors and better doctors, and figure out how to actually create workplaces that are accommodating and don't require you to be a dude, with a legacy recommendation, and you can and be a good doctor. Maybe, again, it's frustrating that this problem existed in the first place, but it's good that it's being fixed, and look at the results right away. For what it's worth, I went to law school in New Zealand. And across the board, New Zealand was the first country in the world to give women the vote. The state of Ohio beat New Zealand in terms of universal suffrage, but New Zealand was the first country. Proud sort of heritage around that in New Zealand. And certainly when I graduated law school, at that time, the head of the Prime Minister, the head of the opposition, the head of New Zealand's Supreme Court, the head of the biggest companies in New Zealand were all women, as well as my graduating law school class of 100 people was, I would say, at a rough guess, it was something like 70% women. And even then, so it was kind of funny. We had feminism and law topics in my law school, and I remember debating them. And at one point, they were talking about how they still were doing various programs to ensure that women could succeed better. And I raised my hand at one point, and I said, "Hey, listen, there aren't many of us dudes left now. Can't we say that this has been wildly successful and justice has prevailed and congratulate ourselves?" And I was told, no, because you still get paid more than us. I was like, I don't get paid anything, seriously. But there was still the point that, even when the wins are good and they are important, but that was a legitimate point, actually, that women, even in the same jobs, even in places where they get the gender balance, still on average get paid a lot less. They don't get evaluated the same. And so, even enlightened countries, even the best performing countries, still have a ways to go on this. But Japan, congratulations on making it to the start line, and good to see some good news on that topic anyway. Yeah, ASIO keyboard, vintage style, nice, nice. I think I know the one that you're talking about. I know someone who uses one of those. That is cool. Wingstar, thank you. I'm very happy. I am a little bit self-conscious, but happy that you did that. So awesome. Um, this has been quite a violent show. Says Mr. Cordy Chap. Has this been a violent show? I hope not. I'm sorry. RS Desire, nice to see you there in the chat. Sounds like a typical manga with a cynical plot. I was probably, again, I can't remember exactly what I was talking about when you made that comment, but good to see you there in the chat. Thank you for speaking up. Lysander 45, good evening. Don't record any running sessions, but do walk a lot. Walking along Lake Biwa. Yeah, like I've never been to Lake Biwa, but I hear it's lovely down there. So it's good just to get out and just to get your steps in and all that sort of stuff anyway. Splitting hairs on the subject, I'm not sure. Couldn't rank it. It's obvious that men need some sort of affirmative action to choose more of them if their scores are lower. Well, there was this other thing that was happening that for a long time they had male, female required 50% entrance into schools in Tokyo, and for a long time that benefited women. But actually, it came up recently that it was that because women were on average getting higher scores for a while now, it was actually having a fixed gender ratio was actually harming women entering schools, and they actually abandoned the gender ratio. But yeah, the point that I got corrected on, and there is a fair point to it. It's like I said, it's not just a matter of getting the same numbers. It's, that doesn't mean necessarily that you've reached equality. It's not really until it's all the way through that pay, advancement, career opportunity, and everything is equaled out. And that takes a long time, and no one's really, gotten there perfectly yet, even more enlightened countries. But yeah. But indeed, the misogynists definitely got themselves their day and age. A Japanese friend who's a heart surgeon told you it wasn't the case weren't intelligent enough, but fields they study. As the ratio of male to female surgeons skewed to males, was very skewed to males. Yeah, well, look, I can understand that. But again, blackballing them before they even get into medical school, I don't know if that's the best answer. I can understand that, and in the end of the day, however you address the problem of distribution and roles and so on, rigging the exam scores is not the way that you fix the problem, So at least hopefully there can be a bit more of a transparent and fairness-based discussion now, at least in terms of how you do this. David VPN, Spruiking, JWO Ethics, just JWO, I don't know what JWO stands for. No, I'm just talking about, look, I raised my hand in a feminist class saying, please, enough already. And I'm telling you the story that I got back, and I took the point that there's, you can never quite declare an end to it. Yeah, if you find that disgusting, you're allowed to. It's a free, I'm just sharing things I've learned in my time. But yeah, you don't have to agree with me. Anyway, next topic. Some good topics here. One, interesting one by Nippon.com. They publish a lot of good stuff. This is, I think, a translated article. Talking about can the new digital agency transform Japan into a tech-savvy society? And I have nuanced thoughts about this. This is why I included this on here. First of all, it is wonderful that Japan finally has a digital agency, and it is needed, not so much. I mean, yes, everyone can come here and talk about how, yes, Japan still uses faxes everywhere, and, a lot of the paperwork and everything still seems very backward, and, they should use tech more. A lot of people say that. I mean, at the same time, there are a lot of companies like Sony, Nintendo, a lot of banks, a lot of specific companies and industries that are, still Toyota, have some of the best high-tech talent and talented people and leading edge sort of stuff in the world. And it is funny how things swing, how in 2005 Japan had the most advanced phones in the world, and then the US, Apple released the iPhone, and 5 years later it was like, well, why is Japan so behind on phones? But they've been ahead for like 15 years, so everything goes in cycles and so on. So the first thing is, I don't think it's fair to say that Japan is not a tech-savvy society. Japan is a tech-savvy society. It's on slightly different cycles to, to the US and countries that are closely tied with that, although they're getting closer and closer over time. But certainly the Japanese government is not tech savvy, and that is a massive problem. And the primary objective of the digital agency, I mean, it certainly has a general mandate to improve digitization and to improve technology use throughout Japanese society. But the first big problem is the Japanese government itself, and that is where they are focusing first, and that is the right thing. There are a lot of companies and a lot of industries that look to the Japanese government and will imitate the Japanese government if the Japanese government starts having electronic signatures and allowing you to apply for things electronically and so on, and they reduce a lot of paper-based stuff, then that is going to have a flow-on effect into the economy. I can tell already in my regular work. I'm finding a lot of holdout manufacturers that don't want to use electronic signature. Like right now, there's COVID. I don't want to be going into the office and stamping a contract because, a company doesn't believe in electronic signatures, which are legal. And I've been trying to persuade them of this for years. But, I am now telling them that I'm not asking anymore. We're just going to give you an electronic signature. And if it's good enough for the Japanese government, who's now accepting electronic signatures, you can accept them too. So, it's true that the Japanese government does lead a certain element of the economy. However, I think it's a bit of an outdated view. It's a view from the 1970s and 1980s about the in the old days, what MITI used to be. MITI, the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Economy, or something like that, I think is what it used to be. In fact, that doesn't quite work properly, but MITI used to directly control the car industry. They had actually prescribed how many car companies there can be, even the specifications of cars. And still, the Ministry of Internal Affairs Communications still pretty much dictates how communication companies run and so on in a lot of detail. And so I think even within the government and within a lot of parts of the media and academia, it's not completely misplaced, but I think that the belief that the Japanese government is there to lead the Japanese economy and instruct companies what to do, that has really shifted. And I think a lot of companies have gone far beyond the Japanese government, particularly on this. And this is the problem. That when you create regulations that are overly prescriptive, where they're telling you how to run your business, and they're as in many industries, they're prescribing right down to requiring paperwork and forms and so on that directly inhibit the adoption of technology by companies. That is a big problem that the digital agency is aiming to clear out and will have a big impact. But I think it's a misnomer, for all the faxes and so on. Japan isn't. I don't think it's fair to say that it's not a tech-savvy society, but the government is not, and that is a huge problem, and it's a source of huge inefficiency and waste in a government which is, the highest spending per capita, I think, of any country, and has the highest debt of just about any country in the world per capita. I think that the mission of the digital agency to improve government is needed, and I'm looking forward. And there's some really big things that have happened in the last few months where they've just started the very first baby steps into, for example, having electronic contracts and starting to have a lot of government-run systems operate on common technological standards, using things like cloud-based infrastructure. Things that started like 15 years ago in most other OECD countries and still haven't started at all. Just the fact that whenever there's an earthquake, for example, it drives me crazy. There's a typhoon or an earthquake and a local government puts the disaster information where the evacuation sites are on their little server that they've got in the office. And everybody who needs to see that information accesses that website and it crashes. And that's got all the survival information. Just the fact that they are, there isn't, redundant infrastructure to allow Japanese government agencies to reliably provide emergency information in a country like Japan is incredibly frustrating to me. And the fact that they are going to be starting to remedy that stuff is really, really exciting, of course. And the Japanese government's huge and it will have a big knock-on effect. But we'll see. Japan is really, the government is really starting from zero on this. And certainly it's not in a place to lead. It should actually be looking to the private sector and looking to follow. Japan has plenty of good examples around this. And there are some really great jobs at the moment in Japan. They're suddenly realizing that particularly for leading edge type tech, including things like, cloud infrastructure jobs, AI, machine learning engineering, and so on. There are jobs out there now where the companies are willing to pay wages above what their executives get paid. Most execs in Japan get paid like between 100,000 to 300,000 US dollars a year. And yet in the US and Silicon Valley, a lot of engineers easily get more than that as their regular, for mid-level type engineers. But a lot of companies are now realizing that they need that talent. The other thing as well, the other big upside about the government and the digital agency transforming is they are going to drag the large SIs that basically have this stranglehold. And they are another reason I believe that technology has been slowed down within government and within society, is that, they don't want to invest in, they want to keep squeezing old technology for as much money as they can get out of it. They want to keep one of their mainframes running, and they want to keep their 20-year-old on-premises legacy systems going. They don't have the expertise to switch over and update these systems. And, the systems being old and proprietary allows them to prevent anyone from taking the work from them. So, they're another reason that Japan's fallen so far behind. The government kind of taking the lead and forcing those companies to develop the skills to transform the Japanese government will increase the number of people who can help regular companies, and will in turn increase innovation and competitiveness in the economy. So this is a really big deal that the digital agency formed, and it's really doing some good things, and I hope it sees out its mission. A lot of really big structural problems at the moment around this, and I really hope that they realize that this is one where the Japanese government shouldn't be telling everyone what to do per se. I mean, they should be telling the SIs and so on that are holding everything back, but they should also be looking at the great companies in Japanese society that are already doing this stuff and learning from them. So anyway, that's something part of my regular day job and something I'm kind of passionate about. It's wrong that Japan is not a tech-savvy society. There are tech-savvy companies, but they're just not followed enough. So anyway, IROC 299. The government's trying at last to bring social welfare tax stuff together with the My Number card system. Baby steps, but well overdue. Yeah, everybody, of course, the interesting thing about the My Number system as well, basically a social security number system, which, by the way, well, at least when I left New Zealand, there wasn't a secure social security number system. So this is new for me as well. It's something when I go to the US or when I worked for US companies and I need to get payment transfers and I didn't have a social security number, and it made life incredibly difficult. The one thing that's interesting with Japan is that Japan has this enormous cash-based economy. Did the stream die? I hope not. Mr. Cordy Chep, oh, your internet, I'm sorry to hear that. The My Number system, of course, Japan has a huge cash-based economy. There are a lot of people who, for example, work at companies during the week, but moonlight as hosts or hostess, work at hostess bars, or do jobs basically sort of under the table and those sorts of things. And it is a massive part of the economy. And because it's cash-based, it's not taxed. And this is one reason why they want to basically force among the goals of the My Number system are not only to improve efficiency in spending, for example, and you can point out the benefits, that it makes it easy to target. If someone's receiving certain sort of benefits, they might benefit from other assistance or whatever. It can improve government services and improve efficiency of spending in government and so on, help reduce fraud. But the other thing, of course, is that it helps when you have your bank account linked to a My Number. It means that tax audits can pick up if you are getting money under the table. And also they can force employers to basically link. It'll improve tracking of how much income everyone's getting, which is a big problem for a big chunk of the economy in Japan. It's going to be interesting how that's going to pan out. But that in itself, I mean, tax collection is something that, again, with the elderly society and more people on social welfare, fewer people working, and ballooning debt, this is really one of the only ways that the Japanese government's going to be able to fiscally survive. So it's kind of necessary, although it kind of sucks. Aaron's saying that most American hotels still use fax machines. Every person in Japan who has a kid in school, at a public school, almost all public schools, it's not like a national rule, but it pretty much is everywhere. You have to have a fax at school. If my son is not feeling well or going to be late for school, his late note has to be sent by fax. So we had to buy a fax for my son's late notes. So every home in Japan still has a fax. Even, I remember when I first came to Japan in the 90s, people would use faxes as for regular communication. Now it's pretty much just that schools force you to do it. But it drives me crazy. Skipping over, Theodore Sharp has no problem being with the at-home dad. Still make money either way. Glad to hear that. Andrew, sexism in that institution that spells Dayaku in that way. Shocking, old-fashioned way, yeah. One Johnson, a lot of missiles today. What's the anti-missile tech like? Do you know? Not really. I know that Japan has Patriot missile batteries all over the place. The stars of the 1990 Gulf War. I think. Oh, and of course Japan has Aegis, the Aegis system, which is although there's some they have Aegis destroyer ships that go around in the Sea of Japan and basically can be like an anti-missile system that's integrated with a U.S. satellite. And U.S. defense systems. They wanted to have some onshore versions of the Aegis system. The Aegis system, by the way, is just it's a massive sort of radar, satellite, missile defense shield sort of integrated system. They can move all over the place, and they can basically create like a iron dome theoretically over wherever they are, including they have them in the Sea of Japan because those would also block ICBMs going from China to America theoretically, but they're there to protect Japan. So Japan has those. They are bought from the US and they work with US systems. They wanted to have some Aegis onshore. They wanted to have this sort of iron dome type system over land in Japan, but there were some pushbacks in the sites and they had to reconsider their plans where they were planning it. I think that it is a good system to have. Of course, what's also interesting is that North Korea claims to have tested hypersonic missiles, which just basically means they're actually ballistic. They just fire them up and they descend naturally at hypersonic speeds, but they claim to be able to steer them, basically like a cruise missile. China's been testing these, and that caused a big panic in America, but it turns out North Korea is figuring out how to do it as well, and that's a problem for most missile defense systems that are based on figuring out where the missiles are going to go by drawing a straight line. But America, of course, has been using hypersonic missiles themselves since the 1970s. So this isn't really new tech, but and I think right now probably Japan and everyone is starting to think about what to do about this, and I believe that Japan is talking about actually using rail guns, which if you're into science fiction, you'll know what those are. Those are basically a bunch of electromagnets, like, particle collider type tech where you put actual stuff into it and they can shoot stuff so fast that you can't steer to avoid it. So I don't know. I mean, I'm all for railguns so long as they're attached onto the arms of enormous human-shaped robots that can fly. That would work for me. But yes, that's about all I know about missile systems. But Iraq 299. Our kids' schools are on emailing systems. Well, that's good. That's good. It's good to see some common sense progress. Not where I am, unfortunately, but yeah. Anyway, we're coming up on time as usual, and I've still got a few things left, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. Tiny pigeons with tiny helmets. I like that. That could work. I've talked about this before, and just very quickly, the mRNA technology. By the way, the situation right now, they've hardly started with the third shots yet, and they've pretty much only been for medical workers. So Japan is, I believe, the most behind country in the entire OECD at the moment on booster shots. I'm totally getting mine when they're available, but each to their own. It's not mandatory in Japan. In fact, you can't require it. You can't even ask your employees. You shouldn't ask your employees if they've had the shot or not. So, and in spite of that 80% for the entire population, which means most people, the eligible population, have the shot. But the third shot, the distribution hasn't really started yet. But that said, the technology is just amazing and what it's unlocked. I mean, the idea that we are looking now at actual being able to get HIV vaccines the same as you would get like a mumps vaccine is just like insane. That we could be getting working shots. And the fact that they're also talking now, they're pretty close to having shots for different types of cancers. I mean, we already have, of course, HPV shots, which in a way prevent cancer. And the fact that that's been controversial in Japan, the Japanese government's finally starting to support that again. The fact that we could be getting like that, this could be a real, something that we could look back and say, well, that pandemic that lasted hopefully for 2.5 years, although I get the feeling it'll end up being longer than that. As terrible as it was, the benefit is that it gave us cures to AIDS and cancer. I mean, that'd be somewhat worth it. I mean, right? For there has to be some payoff from all of this. That is incredible. I mean, it's taken 30 years, but 40 years. But that is wow news. Situation in Tokyo, for those of you who want to know, that curve is not easy. You can see it there getting up to, yeah, we've had cases this week of 17,000. It's basically still doubling every week. Not good, about 200 there. The rolling 7-day average is going up 200% every week. So that is still not easing back yet. The other thing that is also happening that is somewhat alarming at the moment is that fever clinics are getting too many patients and they're not able to see everyone, so they're turning patients away with fevers because they can't even meet them. Also, PCR tests are running out. Shops, pharmacies are not able to supply them anymore, and supplies being left and prioritized for hospitals. So, of course, as well as the positivity rate going now up to like 30%, where you really don't want to have more than 5 to show that you're doing adequate testing. Now places are actively now starting to run out of tests, run out of supply of test kits. So it looks like the numbers might come down this week just purely out of the inability to do more tests. It looks like we're hitting those kind of limits here. So yeah, just like in the United States and other places where they're starting to see serious breakdowns of schools closing, important things for society to run closing down based on numbers. We are heading in that direction. It really isn't great. The only good news is that numbers are starting to come down in Okinawa, which does appear to be where Omicron really came in hard first into Japan. It seems, unfortunately, probably from the US base there. But it's been going down, numbers have been going down there slowly for about 2 weeks now, and it doesn't seem to be from running out of tests. So, they seem to be about 2 weeks ahead of Tokyo, so there's some hope there that maybe things will ease back. But the other situation is that the Tokyo governor has said that if the hospital bed occupancy rate reaches 50%, she'll ask for a state of emergency, and it's like at 49 point something percent right now. So looks pretty likely this week that the Tokyo governor is going to ask for another state of emergency, which is going to lead again to not a proper lockdown, but kind of a quasi-lockdown, like a very strong voluntary lockdown like we've had before. So yeah, things are not good. Oh, there is the third shot vaccination rate, as you can see, still pretty low in Japan at the moment. Like before, slow to get off the mark, but what can you do? Was looking at an astrophotography video, and they pointed to the site lightpollution.info. I used to live in a very dark sky part of the world in New Zealand, and this is a great site that helps you find where nearby dark skies are if you want to see some really great if you want to do astrophotography or astronomy or whatever. And one thing that's funny about Japan is that, yes, while Japan of course allow cookies, while Japan of course is has this huge population, as you would expect. Oh, trying to move that map around. It's not letting me do it very well. There we go. You can see Tokyo there, of course, is like a huge pachinko parlor on the map of Japan. But because Japan is so mountainous and rugged, go away, ad I don't want to see. Because Japan is so mountainous, it means that you can actually go not very far away from Tokyo, and there are some actual really dark sky spots, like Fukushima, but West Fukushima, so not because of the nuclear accident or anything. Iwate has some serious dark skies. Down in Kyushu, there are some really, really good places. Surprised, like in Miyazaki and so on, that you can go down there and how do can I reduce? I think I can do this. As good as like the outback in Australia. And this is why Japan is like famous in astronomy circles, apart from the fact, well, there's two things. Astronomy, Japanese astronomers, just like Japanese artisans and anything else, are just relentless at like recording and taking down detailed information. And this is why there are so many comets that are discovered by and named after Japanese astronomers. But one is just the kind of Japanese relentless attention to detail, but the other is that Japan has seriously great skies. By comparison, you go over to Korea, across the water over here, and there are, like you can see in the whole country, there's no dark skies anywhere over Korea. There is in North Korea. North Korea looks like it would be great for astrophotography. But South Korea, there is not. But Japan is just part of the landscape here. It's a reminder of how great the nature is in Japan and how accessible it is from the big cities. So I thought that was actually very cool. As a good reminder. It's something I would love to do myself. Final thing, two more things that I'll say. One is kind of a big one. One will just be very quick. Naoto Kan, who is a politician I don't like. He's in a party that I would prefer, I would like to see get into government, but the party he's in is a mess. And he's a terrible, he's in my ranking of prime ministers. There's nothing worse than having someone who's on the side that you support but who really sucks. You know, it's easy when someone on the other side sucks, but there's nothing worse than someone who, you know, is in a government that you want to get elected, but he goes in and he screws it all up. But yeah, he's a hardcore, got a socialist background. How socialist? He was in the Japan Socialist Party when it was affiliated with the North Korean Workers' Party, and was opposed to recognition of sovereignty of South Korea because they believed that, because they actually had parliamentary exchanges with the North Korean government. That was the party that he joined. So representative of the working class, real socialist politician, but yet what's happened in Osaka is all of those working class voters, just like working class voters in the US and working class voters in the UK, they're following them. They've moved away from voting for the socialist representatives that they always vote for, and they've moved away to voting for populist right-wing parties. And in Osaka, they've moved away to voting for the Ishin no Kai, the Osaka First Party, if you like, and it's a very populist sort of centre-right party. And he's basically put out some tweets saying that, yeah, Osaka, all of those rowdy low-income types are just, they're leaders like Hitler, and they're just they're low-income, not very smart people who are just a bunch of shavs are going and supporting the the deplorables are now out there supporting the Ishin no Kai, which, by the way, is not as right-wing as the LDP, although they are more to the right. But it seems to be what's happening everywhere. The left is losing the votes of working class people, and they're like lashing out at them as being like uneducated chavs. The fact that someone from the Japan Socialist Party is actually mocking working class people as being low income and uneducated, just crazy. I mean, and again, on top of that, his party is looking for ways to cooperate with the Osaka party to take down the LDP. And he's in there trying to make sure that doesn't happen. So bad strategy all around, just a wild and crazy guy. Final one, this has actually been a big topic in the news the last few days. Features on NHK everywhere. The latest population statistics have come out. And while Tokyo has still not gone quite to a net loss of population, in terms of the movements of people within Japan, Tokyo was still one of the only prefectures in Japan. Most of the country is losing people just from old age and depopulation. But also perennially, even when the population was growing, Tokyo always attracts lots of people. It's got all the jobs, it's got the biggest population. People come to Tokyo. And that is still the case. Tokyo is still a net receiving more people than it's losing. But what's happened in the last 2 years with the pandemic is that Tokyo has an almost equal people leaving Tokyo and coming into Tokyo. And a lot of people are putting this down to, again, incentives to move to, depopulating rural towns, telework, the ability to go and live in smaller towns for a better lifestyle, for cheaper, cost of living and so on. And I guess if the pandemic bothers you, it totally makes sense that you would leave the Tokyo. There's a bit of a flaw in this. There's a map which isn't on this, which I tweeted somewhere else, which showed still the vast majority of people leaving Tokyo are going to, frankly, the satellite towns around Tokyo where, Greater Tokyo is 35 million people, and, there are like 6 prefectures in that range. And most of them are going to those 6 prefectures. So honestly, they're just moving more into the suburbs. That's half of the explanation. However, a lot of people are going to Hokkaido and Fukuoka and places more far afield. And some people are being very triumphant on Twitter, saying that, you see, it's a terrible thing that Tokyo attracts all of this population. It's good that this is being corrected. I have this debate with a lot of friends, actually. Look, I'm in Tokyo from New Zealand because Tokyo rocks. I'm here because, whether you call it a vicious or a beneficial cycle or a virtuous cycle, Tokyo, attracts people because it has people. The culture of the place, the stuff that there is to do, is all based on the fact that so many people get together. So many things you can do, so many things in Tokyo because there are so many people here. I don't think the idea that it's because the capital is here, to me, is another case where that's really outdated thinking. Maybe it was the case 30, 40 years ago, but a lot of big companies in Japan are not based in Tokyo. You definitely do not have to be based in companies will come to Tokyo because it's a really compact. You've got 35 million people within a motorcycle ride if you want to deliver something. So if you want to start up a business, you've got this enormous market in a really small place. So it's really attractive for business. But again, this is another thing. It generates business innovation because there's so many opportunities, such a huge population. You can try anything and have a good chance of succeeding. It's not because of the government being here. And, this is why I'm here. I'm here because it's such an energetic place with so many people. While I can understand people moving away from Tokyo for lifestyle reasons, most of those people are still moving within commuting distance. And you know what? I think it's great if the government does make it better and easier, if there's better internet infrastructure. And I would love the idea myself of being able to spend half my time, living in the mountains with a telescope, to my observatory house, or living by the beach where I could surf every morning and then do telework. I mean, honestly, I'm just in a room anyway. So there's the argument. Obviously, got a kid in school, so I can't do that right now, but maybe in a few years, that's something that I'd like to do. I love the idea that people will be able to improve their lifestyle, without being penalized for that. But you know what? I'd still want to live in Tokyo. I wouldn't want to give up a house in Tokyo. I don't think. I love being here. So anyway, that is it for me. Those are all the topics that I have this week. Interesting, though, that there are fewer and fewer people in Tokyo. But that is all that I have. Osaka also rocks. The big city all rocks for all those same reasons. Iraq 299, love the astronomy stuff. Have a good night there. Iraq 299, Quint Rankit as well. It's not really shocking when socialists talk about how bad working class people are, because those elitists never really cared about working class people. Well, yeah, I think it's changed. Certainly they have become often elitist and are more out of touch. But, back in the day, they were from that background themselves. I think that, but there again, I think people have realized that the solutions that socialism has, don't seem to work as well as everyone once believed. They've lost their way a little bit. Quinn Rankin, but do I want to retire in Tokyo? Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. Part of me wants to be by the beach, but part of me enjoys being in Tokyo for all the stuff that's here. And, if I could, I guess I'd like the best of all worlds. So I guess I'd like multiple houses, and I definitely want to have a house in Tokyo. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I'd spend my retirement, so I guess that's a problem. But Juan Johnson, thank you for the thumbs up. Everybody, remember, I'm doing this for thumbs up and peanuts, so please, if you like the show, remember to like. If you only saw part of this, or you want to catch this, if you came late and you want to listen to it rather than watch it on YouTube, you can go to Anchor FM and find all the podcast streams of this and watch it for free. I'll put the podcast version of this out probably right after the show. Stay safe, of course. Omicron is a terrible, terrible thing. It's not getting better yet, so stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Hope to see you all back here at 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time next week. Do appreciate everybody coming in every week. Also appreciate people disagreeing with me. You're allowed to do that. Also loved hearing Wingstar that you got a nice keyboard and you're out running. It's super cool. Everybody take care. Have a great week. Remember to like if you liked, and boom, peace. I wonder if the sound was in sync this week. I didn't do anything this week, but you know what? I think it was working as it was. Anyway, we'll see. Peace out. Boom.